Public Affairs programming on WQPT is brought to you by the Singh Group at Merrill Lynch, serving the wealth management needs of clients in the region for over 25 years.
Explaining their vote, two Illinois lawmakers join us to explain why they voted the way they did on the Illinois budget bill that passed last week, plus raising millions for charity just by knocking around a little white ball in the cities. It's golf week in the cities right now. That draws millions of dollars in tourism revenue to the region, but it also is the biggest fundraising week for several nonprofit groups. That's coming up in a moment. But first, why'd they vote the way they voted? Last week was a dramatic one in Springfield as lawmakers had to vote on a $37 billion Illinois state budget bill and a permanent income tax hike on residents, plus a tax on businesses in the state. Not only that, they had to muster enough votes to override vetoes by the governor, Bruce Rauner. Joining me are two local lawmakers who cast very different votes. State Representative Tony McCombie is the freshman Republican from Savannah. State Representative Mike Halpin is the freshman Democrat from Rock Island. Welcome back to the Quad Cities. I know both of you are more than happy to be back.
Yes.
Always good to be home.
Representative McCombie, why did you vote the way you voted on the budget bill and the revenue bill?
Several reasons. For me, the most important thing, I don't believe it's balanced. I also don't believe it's going to do what the hope is that it's going to do. There's nothing in there that I can see that's going to address our backlog issues. With our backlog, we're at, I believe, $15 billion now, and the plan is that there's going to be $370 million of surplus dollars that's going to pay for the bond. We're able to borrow, so get a $6 billion bond, but $370 million isn't going to pay a $6 billion bond payment.
Is it the best that could have been gotten, so to speak?
No. I believe the Friday before all of this fell apart, negotiations were happening between rank and file, between House Republicans and Democrats and Senate Republicans and Democrats. And I think Madigan and Rauner were not sitting at those tables, so they were actually getting something done. 11:15 at night, they were very motivated that they were going to have something ready to go in writing, and then at 9 o'clock the next day, they're being told the speaker's going to present the bills as is. And so, do I think we would have seen a budget? Yes. Do I think we would have seen a tax hike? Yes. But I think we would have seen one that was negotiated, that would have had reforms, and that would have had some things that were going to help us get out of this mess and put us on the right track. You know, when Quinn did this years and years ago, same deal, but there was no changes and no reforms, and it kind of just put us right back where we were. So until we do that, I think Illinois is going to be in trouble.
Representative Halpin, your vote was interesting. You voted against the revenue plan, right?
Correct.
Voted for the budget, against the revenue plan, but then voted to override the veto.
Correct. This is probably one of the hardest votes that I've taken in my 6 months down there. And I had concerns and still have concerns at the effect that the tax increase is going to have on middle-class families. But in those intervening 3 days, I got a lot of feedback from constituents, from local colleges and universities, from other social service agencies, that this was really kind of the end point for them. For the past 2 years, they've been able to keep their head above water. They had been fiscally responsible, so they've been able to weather the storm, but we're getting close to a breaking point. And when you combine that with the report from Moody's and some of the other ratings agencies that we're very close to junk bond status, I ultimately decided that an imperfect budget was better than no budget at all, and a certainty that we'd be in that junk bond status.
But it certainly sounds like these credit agencies still aren't totally sold on what the state of Illinois has done, and there's still so much more work to be done.
Absolutely, and the job isn't done. We do have reforms that we need to pass. We have passed several that the Senate's also passed. Some of the Senate is still considering, and we need to keep that process going. I also intend to push for more, reforms to kind of shield the middle class and the lower income bracket against this tax increase, to try to make it a little bit more fair for those. And I also intend to continue to press for a millionaire surcharge, so that the folks at the top are the ones that actually pay their fair share.
So whose budget is this, Representative McCombie? We have 10 Republicans that did help vote to override the veto. Is it just a Democratic, a Madigan budget, or is this now an Illinois budget that is shared equally by both houses of the legislature, mostly Democrats, but some Republicans as well?
Right, we have 61 Democrats that voted for it. And I believe it certainly is a bipartisan vote with the 10. However, it certainly is not a compromise. I think it's a combination of I think it's a combination of what they were doing in 2016 when they were negotiating. I think it's a combination of the grand bargain, the capital compromise, and Rouners and Madigan's. So I think it's a mix of everything. The biggest piece that we're missing, though, and we keep saying this, and even Representative Halpin, the reforms are missing from this. And the reforms that were passed in the House, there was a property tax exemption. It just didn't go far enough. And you want to protect the middle class, then protect the middle class. Do so by having this income tax hike if you want to do that. And they did increase the earned income rather than the capital compromise at 15%. It went to 18%, which is going to help that a little bit. But do the property tax reform. And then that would help, because then you're not going to have that be going up. And actually have a true repayment method for your backlog. And that's why Moody's is going to continue their downgrade, not to mention the pension liability. We say 130 billion, they say 250 billion. So where are we going to be? And so when you say you have a lot of work to do, I feel we haven't even started. And when we had Republicans go on that bill, what that did was stop negotiations. And I believe, unfortunately for them, that they were duped. They were led down a lane that was with misleading information, and that's too bad, because now they're not only getting it from the Republican side, they're getting it from the Democrat side too. One of the representatives is, thank you for your vote, however, let's remember how terrible she is. So it's not really a thank you for support.
A lot of the Republicans, though, that did vote in favor of this actually represent university communities.
Correct.
And that seems to have been a major sway as far as a lot of the Republican lawmakers are concerned. You represent Western Illinois University in this area, so I mean, did that at all sway your vote? I mean, obviously it did not.
No, it didn't, because I feel we could have had a better budget at the same time. So I think that first vote really just stopped the process. And that's unfortunate. You always talk about good faith. There was no good faith negotiations. There absolutely was none, in my opinion. And when you stop negotiations, then you stop the good faith.
Because that seemed to be the way it was on Friday before everything seemed to collapse Friday night, and then no vote on Saturday going into the 4th of July, was everyone was talking about good faith on Friday.
I'd strongly disagree that there wasn't any good faith or that negotiations broke down. Because at the end of the day, you had 15 Republicans that voted for this budget after negotiating with the rank and file on the Democratic side. So to say that these legislators were somehow duped or tricked, I don't think is accurate. I think they went into this with their eyes open, and they saw a need in their community to have a balanced budget, and having it better than no budget at all. We talk about the ratings agencies still having some reservations. If we had not passed a budget that week, those rating agencies wouldn't even be giving us a chance right now. We still have an opportunity to get us on the right path going forward that we might not have had if we didn't pass a balanced budget.
You said that you had talked to people before you made your vote in regards to the veto override. What have you heard since you made that vote?
I've gotten a mix, like any other vote I've ever taken. I get some thank you for your vote. I get emails, phone calls about expressing disappointment with the vote. One thing I think we've both experienced is that you're in a divided atmosphere that we have. You're not able to please everyone. And you just have to try to do what's best for the district and the state as a whole.
Where do we go from here? Because we were talking, Representative McCombie, saying, the budget is a deal. It's important, but if you think about that, that's the foundation of what you're supposed to be doing anyhow. The real reforms are what still have to be done. Can we expect that in the weeks or months to come?
I think so. We've already started that process. We have passed certain bills. And I would say that to vote against them just because they don't go far enough is not always the right answer. If we have reforms that will make a difference, it is better to pass those reforms now and keep working and try to pass more reforms than to let that time go by without those initial reforms kicking in. We need to do everything we can on a short-term basis when we have agreement that it's a good idea. You shouldn't reject a good idea just because there might be an even better idea a week down the road or a month down the road.
Last week we talked to East Moline School Superintendent Kristen Humphreys, who's been very outspoken as far as Senate Bill number 1, which has to do with equitable funding for school districts, as well as the property tax freeze that's been recommended in Springfield, which also has a huge impact on school districts. You've heard from him. What do you want to see done with school funding and actually some fundamental changes in the way Illinois does fund its school systems?
Well, I've heard from all of them. I will tell you, the educators have a very strong voice. They're very unified, which I appreciate. I believe in the evidence-based funding model. The budget that was passed has that in there with the new funding. However, it's not recognized in statute, so it gave false hope. And they know that, and they're freaking out. Because how are we going to be funded?
And you've got school districts that are opening in the middle of next month.
Absolutely. So that's what we're probably going to be called back for. But for me, in my district in 71, there is every school, it's true, every school, the way it's written right now, will receive new funding. No arguments there. However, the way the funding is done for CPS schools is that they're putting the pensions in and their health insurance in, and a pension legacy of $500 million. What that does...
When you talk about CPS, it's Chicago
Public Schools. And what that does, it puts Chicago ahead of our kids, in my opinion. So I will be, yes, in District 71 receiving new funding, but I could receive $2.2 million more. And in Mike's district, which I have kids that go to his district, there's an additional $4.6 million that could be going to that district. So for me, and when I'm walking doors all day long, I hear, can we make Chicago its own place? And we agree that Chicago's a great place and has an economic impact to Illinois, but there's no way in God's green earth I can put Chicago kids before my own. This process is supposed to be fair and equitable. Then let's make it fair and equitable. Put the pension piece in a pension bill.
And let's be honest, most of the representatives that serve Chicago are Democrats. So of course, the Democratic Party has a belief that this is helpful. But you're an outstate Democrat. So how do you feel about Senate Bill number 1 and where its status is right now?
I certainly support it because I've heard from our local superintendents and educators and teachers that say this is the model. This model is the way to go. It's a model that allows every district to have equity and adequacy for their students. And I don't think it's right to pit one school district against the rest of the state. And it's another example where you have a good formula that helps. No district loses throughout the state. Everyone is helped. And so this is a good plan for our area, and that's why the superintendents and the administrators support it. I don't think that when you're talking about an education funding formula that we've tried for 30 years to try to change and make more equitable, to turn it down because it's just not quite good enough is wrong. We need to do something now.
I strongly disagree on I believe in the model, but if it's done the way it's supposed to, using all the factors, I think there's 20 pieces to that. If it's done the way it's supposed to, we wouldn't be even having any sort of dispute about it. There wouldn't be any additional money going to Chicago over ours. I mean, even categoricals. It's amazing. Chicago's going to get ag funding before we do, and that's a hold harmless. You kidding me?
We're coming out of a big budget vote. One would say Madigan won, Rauner lost. Is that how you see it? And my real question is, where do you go from here? Does this give Madigan a stronger hand in future bills and governing for the rest of this year, or does Rauner regroup and is just as strong as he ever was?
Well, I think there's no winners in this budget. I think the people of Illinois completely lost. And we've given false hope to those folks in domestic violence. And social services, they feel that they're going to start being able to hire, and they're going to have budget, they're going to be getting money, and all of that's true, but we're going to be here. It would be my bet, and I hope this isn't true, but we will be going back in for a supplemental appropriation because there's not enough money to fund this. We're not going to be able to borrow the $6 billion to pay back. We're not going to be able to continue to smooth our pensions. We haven't even really talked about that. You know, there again, we're taking from the pensions. We're smoothing out that money. So 5 years is going to go by and they're going to be underfunded again. If we were to fully fund this budget and pay the pensions the way we're supposed to, it'd be a $39 billion budget.
Because you look back and Governor Pat Quinn had wanted the temporary tax to be extended, and almost that's exactly what's just happened. Was Governor Quinn right all along?
I don't know. I don't think the tax structure that we have with this existing flat tax really shares the burden fairly, which is why I've always advocated for that millionaire surcharge to have an additional tax on those making over $1 million. I do agree that any solution needed to have additional revenue, but I don't think this was necessarily the perfect way to do it. I think we could have reached this kind of deal 2 years ago, and I'm really saddened and ashamed that we didn't. But I do think the personality conflict down in Springfield before either of us got down there was significant enough to hold up this kind of resolution. And I do worry that is going to continue for the next year. And I'm not particularly concerned with the political implications. I think we still have a job to do over the next 12 to 18 months, and I hope that continues. But I do worry that it's going to be a continued standoff between Democrats and the governor.
When you talk about the millionaire tax, because you've mentioned it before, I think even the representative before me mentioned it before. My thought is, call the bill. Speaker Madigan can call any bill he wants. Call it. He could have called it last year when or last session before we were there. He could have called the minimum wage bill. He could have called this millionaire tax bill. And he had veto power. These could be law right now. So call him.
Don't talk about it.
Call him. And that's what happens a lot in Springfield. A lot of talk.
Representative Halpin, Representative McCombie, happy 6-month anniversary in Springfield. I hope your next 6 months are perhaps just as interesting, maybe not as stressful, let's put it that way. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jim.
Well, in a moment, a place where every putt counts for cash. But first, Laura Adams tells us about all the events that could be on your agenda next week if you plan to putter around and go out and about.
This is Out and About for July 10th through 16th. Hi, I'm Laura Adams. Catch the exciting action at the John Deere Classic July 10th through 16th at TPC Deere Run, or come and enjoy the fun during the Mercer County Fair at the Mercer County Fairgrounds July 10th through 14th. Lori Berkner performs at Music on the Lawn at the Deere Wyman House July 13th at 6:30. Enjoy music at the historic Orion Bandshell by the Orion Community Band July 12th at 6:30, while the Bettendorf Park Band performs July 14th at Bettendorf Veterans Memorial Park at 7:30. It's time for Walcott Day at Victory Park in Walcott, Iowa on July 15th. Activities from morning till night with fireworks. July 15th is the date for the River's Edge Homebrew Festivale at the Great River Plaza in downtown Rock Island with over 50 different brews to sample. Celebrating America's truckers at the Walcott Truckers Jamboree at the Iowa 80 Truck Stop July 13th through 15th. Frenzy Players present Caucasian Chalk Circle, a retelling of the story of the Judgment of Solomon by Bertolt Brecht. It's a little league of laughter as Richmond Hill Players present the comedy Rounding Third at the Barn Theater in Geneseo. The timeless musical West Side Story continues on the Quad City Music Guild stage through the 15th, and a 1950s horror comic book is brought to life as a musical comedy in Zombie Prom, performing at the Bruner Theater through the 16th. For more information, visit wqpt.org.
Thank you, Laura. Well, even if you don't like golf, you've got to like what the John Deere Classic does for the cities. Since the tournament is a nonprofit event, any money earned gets put back into the community. And add to that, a wildly popular fundraising program called Birdies for Charity. And you've got a 5-day event that has a huge impact all year long. And joining us is the Executive Director of Birdies for Charity, Christy Ketchum-Jackson. Thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
We talk about birdies each and every year. What I can't get over is a record $10.5 million when just, 3 years ago, it was roughly 2/3 that amount. I mean, what has happened that has made it so much more financially successful?
Yes, a great year last year, obviously. I think the message over the last few years has really caught on. The message hasn't changed, but I think we've been repeating it, and it's really beginning to sink in that every charity gets 100% of what is pledged to them. On top of that, because we have the John Deere Classic here in town, generating some revenues, which we turn all of those over into a bonus for our charities. So every charity gets more than 100 cents on the dollar. There is no better fundraising means.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And then once again, I know that you always want to underline the fact that John Deere helps pay for the administrative costs.
Absolutely.
I mean, the bottom line is that the money you give really does end up going straight to the charities.
Exactly. John Deere pays all of our administrative costs. This is what allows us to turn 100% over back to the charities. And on top of that, a bonus to everyone.
And we're talking about not just a few charities, it's been growing as well. I mean, I remember when it was about 300, now you're into like 500, more than 500 charities. Everywhere from Dubuque down to Burlington, not just the Quad City area.
Yeah, just kind of a circle around the Quad Cities. I like to think of it as the same group of people that might be the spectators coming to the area. So maybe within a 2 to 3 hour radius is about as far out as we go. But we get calls from further out. We try to keep it somewhat regional. John Deere Classic area charities, and they love the program.
We were talking about the fact that for a lot of these charities, this is the biggest week of fundraising for them. So, I mean, it's so critically important for each of them. Once again, I mean, for those who aren't real familiar with Birdies for Charity, how does it operate?
Well, we call it the fundraising vehicle for the John Deere Classic. Everybody's familiar with the John Deere Classic. It's a great spectator experience, but the main purpose is to raise money for charity. Any charity can participate. They have to be a 501c3 organization, as we are at the John Deere Classic, making all donations tax deductible, and pledges can be made in the form of a per birdie pledge, which we calculate based on the number of birdies that the pros will score, or what the majority of the pledges are flat donations. They can be $20, they can be $100. We've got individuals and businesses that do much more sizable amounts than that. So any amount to any charity that participates.
And let's be honest, when you look at the Birdies for Charity pamphlet, you get to help people cheat a little bit because you tell us exactly how many birdies have been played over the last 10 years. You can kind of average it out because sometimes if you have a rain out or if there's other various things when it comes to the tournament, it may be far fewer, but it's usually around 1,900, 2,000 birdies.
Exactly. My recommendation is don't guess the year because everybody guesses the year.
That is true. That is true.
But somewhere in the 1,900 to 2,000 range is typically where we've been.
Once again, the winner is eligible for a 2-year lease of a 2017 Lexus NX because the car has been the big prize.
Exactly.
How important is it to have sponsors like that are able to make sure that this is a success?
Great. It's unbelievable. Sponsors like Lexus, who is our grand prize sponsor, certainly John Deere. This is what makes it all possible. Not only does this allow us to bring the tournament to the Quad Cities, this allows us to turn millions of dollars back over into our charities, and more importantly, brings a $53 million economic impact into the area. Community would not be the same without this great benefit that we have.
The thing about the John Deere Classic and Birdies for Charity is that this is a small market. The Quad City market is the smallest among all of the PGA stops, and yet Birdies for Charity has the largest per capita as far as charitable fundraising is concerned. And I know Birdies has been tried out at other tournaments and not quite to the same success.
Right.
Why do you think that is, that it's been so successful here and successful elsewhere, but not as successful?
They're not the Quad Cities. We have been awarded by the PGA Tour the most engaged community, and that's really what it's all about. The community really rallies behind our charities and the John Deere Classic and supporting their charities through the John Deere Classic and Birdies for Charity. I think we've got a great system in place. We've got the best title sponsor on the PGA Tour. Every PGA Tour event is envious of what we have in John Deere and what that allows us to do for charity. So I think we've got the perfect combination of so many things in our favor here, and we want to keep the momentum going.
And people can make pledges online as well, can they not? You don't need that pamphlet, though.
Exactly.
It helps. And you have places, if you're at the golf course, you're able to do it as well. So do you have, can you keep pledging up to a certain point, or how does that work?
We are at the tail end, so please do it now. And if you've got a pledge card laying on your countertop, please send it in right now. You're right about going online. They can go online, pledge a flat donation, and submit a credit card payment, so they're taking care of everything right in one shot and paying it with credit card. Obviously that's not a per birdie pledge because we don't know what that amount will be yet, but it's a $20, $100, whatever the amount may be. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to pledge right away and get those pledges turned in.
Talk a little bit more about the tournament, because the other thing that makes the John Deere Classic so Quad City-esque is 1,700 volunteers.
Right.
And in the past, there was a real rallying cry for new volunteers to get some young blood out there and to make sure that you fill some of these critically important positions. And it seems like that's been happening. I mean, the rally has been even better than before.
I think so. I mean, I kind of feel like the volunteer enthusiasm is similar to the Birdies for Charity program enthusiasm. It really just is on kind of an uphill climb. People are more and more interested every year. It's really a great thing, and I think people feel such pride in being a part of it, and that really motivates people to come back the next year. Their friends say, it's a cool thing you got to be a part of, and their friends come back the next year, whether they're donors, whether they're charities, or whether they're volunteers. Everybody gets such a good feeling and has such pride in what the John Deere Classic is all about that people want to be a part of it and are proud to be a part of it.
And so many great volunteers you have. And sadly, this year's tournament starts on a tragic note where we lost one of the volunteers in an accident on Friday.
Right.
How are you and the rest of the people in the on the John Deere Classic offices, as well as the volunteers, coping with this?
Roughest spot I think we've ever been through in a tournament week or a pre-tournament setup time. I will say that this particular volunteer, long-time volunteer, 27-year, I believe, volunteer, loved the tournament, and his family stepped forward and said, he loved the tournament, we love the tournament, we want you all to put a smile on your face and move forward. And the pride that made us feel was just really gave us all, I think, an extra boost, not only to try to put a smile on our face and move forward, but to what can we do better?
Well, and I have to admit, it's been, some 20 years for me going out there, and it's amazing how it does seem to be old home week. I mean, you see some familiar faces each and every time, and everyone is so friendly and says, hi, how you doing?
Right.
Good to see you again. Is that kind of what you see? I mean, you almost look forward to tourney week, golf week, just because of that.
Absolutely. I mean, there are people that you may see once a year and it's tournament week, but then you see them from sun up until sundown, and you see these people working so hard and giving everything they've got. And I feel so proud of the volunteers out there and such a connection to them. And you may not see them for another year, but when we do, we just pick up right where we left off. And it really is a family, and we really saw that with the tragedy during setup. We really saw what a family it was, and there's never been any doubt the tournament is a family. Everybody has the same goal in mind: have a lot of fun, put on a great event, help the community.
Well, the clock is ticking, so if you want to get involved with Birdies for Charity, do it right now. Give it your best pitch right now.
Get those pledges in. If you've got them sitting on your counter, send them in.
And we're looking for a record of $10.5 million, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
That
That's the goal.
Christy Ketchum-Jackson, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Executive Director of Birdies for Charity. Once again, also, the Wall That Heals is to arrive in the cities later this month. The Vietnam War Memorial replica is accompanied by a mobile education center that will be located on the Western Illinois University Quad Cities campus. The opening ceremony is coming up July 27th, and we're still looking for volunteers to help during the 3-day display. You can learn more and register to volunteer by heading to our website at wqpt.org. On the air, on the radio, on the web, and on your mobile device. Thanks for taking some time to join us. We talk about the issues on the cities.
Public Affairs programming on WQPT is brought to you by the Singh Group at Merrill Lynch, serving the wealth management needs of clients in the region for over 25 years.